Once you have done all of this, you have set up all your volumes, you have set up your data sets. Now what's the most important thing? Yes, you now have to actually copy the data over onto your NAS. That is where I ran into the most issues. And to give you a timeline, I was able to build the NAS, put it in a completely new enclosure, and get it booted up, including creating the datasets and the encryption with the hard drive spin down in about 2.5 hours. And then I took about 2 more hours to actually figure out the permissions, or how actually not just figuring out, to actually grant the right permissions for Windows to be able to access NAS. I didn't want any complex permissions here. All I wanted was my workstation should have complete access to all the datasets on the NAS. That's it. That is all I was trying to do. And I had to jump through a lot of hoops to get there. I just want to document this just in case you are at this point where, hey, you know what, I've created the NAS, everything is done, you thought the difficult part was over, then you hit this blocker of permissions, in setting permissions in CIFS and mapping them to Windows. So let me just give you a quick overview of what you need to do if you just want to give complete access to your NAS from Windows. So the first thing that you need to do is go ahead and create a user. And if you can see, I've created a user here, and this username should be the same username that you use in Windows. So if in Windows you use Bob, you would create a username here as Bob. That's it. As simple as that, nothing more to be done. Once that is done, go over to your volumes, go to your first volume, and make sure that the share type is set to Unix and not Windows. And this is the biggest gotcha that I had. And I didn't realize this for quite a while, but once I moved it back to, so earlier I had set it to Windows, and that created a whole lot of problems. When I moved it back to Unix, it worked just fine. And set it to Unix. Also make sure all your data sets are also set to Unix, because that is important, and I'll tell you why. Now just look at the permissions, what permissions your volumes have. And the owner user here really doesn't matter, because we are going to change it from the shell anyway. And just make sure that the permission type is Unix and it is not set to Windows. You don't want to set permissions recursively, because what will happen is if you disable this, the permissions will be inherited, which is much easier to manage. Now, once you're done, what you need to do is go to your NAS and just create a folder here. I can hear my disk spinning up now because all of them were idling or in standby. Now, once you create that folder, you need to open a shell to your NAS box and look at the newly created folder. Now, when you create a new folder, you have to make sure that this is just once, because we are just testing how the permissions are going to work out. This is just a one-time step you need to do. You don't need to do this over and over again. The first thing that you'd see here is the new folder that you have created. For that, the owner is me, or Ashutosh, which is the login that I'm using in Windows, and it has all the permissions. And the mask here is 777 for this, since it's a directory. Now this is exactly what you want. Now I'll just show you what happens, or how is it different when you set up a volume or a share to be Windows share, and why you don't want that. So just to demonstrate what would happen if I set the permission to Windows, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and create a new dataset and set the share type as Windows, and I'll make case insensitive file names. Now that's spinning up the other 2 drives, and the power consumption has jumped to 70 now. There we have it. Our new volume is created. If you look at the new volume that is just created, look at the permissions. See that plus there? That will be causing all of the trouble that I was running into. Also, the owner is root. We can easily change that, but not the other things. You have created your share and it's visible in Windows Explorer, but let's see what happens when you try to create anything. Oops, that doesn't work. Well, that is because what is happening is the owner is root, but when you're trying to access it using Windows Explorer, you log in as Ashutosh and group is nobody. So effectively, you're not even the owner, you're not even in the same group. So you're by default in the other category. Now, once you are in the other, if you look at the permissions here, the set of permissions, the first 3 RWX is for the owner, the next 3 is for the group, and the last 3 is for others. The best way to do this is let's try to change the permissions on this and grant all permissions to others as well. So let's do chmod 777 since it's a directory, and say test. Whoops, you can't do that. And that is because you have set it up as Windows Share. Now, the other option that I have here is I can very easily change the ownership of that container. And now, yes, I own it. Now let's try creating a folder here. And that works. But see what happens if you try to use robocopy. Now if you look at it, this is pretty interesting. What happens is robocopy give you an error saying that access is denied, but you actually see the file being created there. Now what's happening here? And even if you terminate it, the file still is there. And what is happening here is, with this permission model, what you have set up right now, we are actually able to copy the file over. The file can be copied over, but when robocopy tries to apply the security attributes to the file, it is not able to do so. And that is why after copying the file, when it tries to apply the settings or apply the attributes, that's when it's getting an access denied error. Because the user Ashutosh from Windows does not have permissions to set the file permissions, just as we were not able to do this. And this is exactly why we are getting this error as well. Now, one way around it is you use robocopy with this command here. And there it goes. It works because when you say copy DT, it copies the data, copies the timestamp, but it does not copy the attributes. Because by default, when you don't specify the copy switch, robocopy uses this format, which is the data, attributes, and the timestamp. So we just remove the A from there, and that works. But this is not something that I really wanted, because there are other tools as well, such as SyncToy, wherein you can't change this, and it fails as well when you try to create files in there. So I really wanted to grant 777 permission on all of my containers. So this was never going to work for Windows shares. So the easiest way that I figured out to do this was to just go ahead and set the share type to Unix, and then go back in the share, into the shell. There you go. That's just fine. Now let's try robocopy again, and there you go. It just works. And that took me about 2 hours to fix. And once I did that, I was like, whoa, that was pretty interesting. So once that is done, now if you look at the permissions, once you have set up these permissions, you don't have to worry about the ones that you create, the containers that you create inside test or inside any of these, and because they will automatically inherit the permissions, and they'll get all 777 permissions for directories and 666 for files. So this is, once you set this up, you're all set to start copying the files, and all of your utils and programs will just work. That is it, folks. Until next time, have a good day.